In every city and town across America, there are stories that have been passed down from generation to generation without anyone knowing its origin. Scary bedtime stories or horrific tales that seem to envelop the darkest parts of our mind. These stories, these urban legends, are many times so outrageous, we secretly want them all to be true. In this episode, we explore the urban legends of America's fifth most haunted city, San Antonio, Texas, to see if they're real or not.
On the south side of San Antonio, a once forgotten part of the city, sits a lonely bridge over Elm Creek that many say is home to the Donkey Lady.
There was an old woman. She was very aloof, and she lived in a shack very close to Elm Creek. She also had a donkey that was her only companion.
Unfortunately, this poor old eccentric woman was the victim of bullying. Honestly, she was tortured by the kids in the area.
For whatever reason, this young man began to taunt the mule and tease it, throw rocks at it, things like that. And he actually got close enough to start beating the mule with a stick.
Well, the donkey got scared, got afraid, and bit the little kid. Unfortunately, the kid developed a fever and he died. His friends told their family members that, hey, the kid was bitten by the donkey.
This was around the time of the turn of the century when people really believed in witchcraft and that it was evil. And the townspeople really believed that this old woman had put a hex on the boy.
A lynch mob came, they burned her house, killed her donkey.
As her house is burning, she naturally tries to escape the fire and bursts out of her house, completely engulfed in flames.
This figure was completely deformed. The face was elongated, almost as if the flesh was melting. This person, this creature, just made this horrible, ungodly noise.
She fell into the Elm Creek and disappeared.
The story of the Donkey Lady Bridge is born. Now it's said she haunts the bridge and has vowed to protect herself from further harm. But how do you find her?
The legend is you park your car at the end of the bridge and you yell out Donkey Lady 3 times and then flash your lights 3 times.
You know, if you go there at the right time, you can hear a lady screaming.
There have been accounts of the donkey lady coming up to the vehicle, to the front of the vehicle, and slamming her hoofs down onto the hood.
She's creepy, she's twisted, she's kind of bent and hunched over and comes galloping towards you in your car. The face naturally resembling some kind of a donkey, which would be pretty darn terrifying.
So is the Donkey Lady real? And is this bridge haunted? Or is it a hoax?
This one is really a part of San Antonio pop culture.
Kids were always being told, you better behave or the Donkey Lady's gonna get you.
The Donkey Lady's almost become an unofficial mascot of San Antonio. I mean, there's t-shirts dedicated to her, there's fiesta medals.
There actually was a telephone number that you called, and we used to dare each other to call it. And when you dialed the number, you would get this little recording, and it sounded like a woman making a donkey sound.
San Antonio really took this one to the next level.
There's probably a seed of truth to the story somewhere.
There might be some spirit activity, but nothing that you could attribute to a demonic-like entity that's half human and half donkey.
While many are willing to dismiss the legend, for others, it's not so easy.
I had a really bizarre experience on the bridge. I was doing an EVP session with 2 other investigators, and all of a sudden I had trouble breathing, and the 2 other investigators and I realized that you could see my breath, but you couldn't see theirs. It was like something entered my body.
One night, a bunch of us were out there way later than we should have been, and law enforcement caught us out there. Well, they were really cool when we told them what we were doing, but we did ask the deputy if he'd ever seen anything on the bridge. And he said, yeah, he sees people all the time. and he'll either stop or go and turn back around, which is not enough time for anybody to go anywhere. And he said the people disappear.
I don't think it's haunted by a donkey, but I think the area is pretty thick, as are most places that have been inhabited for long periods of time.
On this one, I have to say, Donkey Lady Bridge is haunted.
Believe what you want, but be careful what you ask for when you summon the Donkey Lady.
Donkey Lady, Donkey Lady, Donkey Lady.
People on the north side of San Antonio, Texas, have long been telling stories about a place of grandeur known as Midget Mansion.
Midget Mansion has always been one of those stories that, people talk quietly about.
Back in this time period, San Antonio was full of these big, amazing mansions all over town.
Look, this mansion is so legit, I definitely would have hosted some parties there.
Well, the story of Midget Mansion is based around a family of little people.
This family moves to San Antonio due to the father's business, and the father, who is a little person, buys this incredible mansion.
They basically built up his business.
Things initially went well to the point where the father hired servants.
Unfortunately, he got into a situation to where his business weren't doing all that great.
This was during the height of the Great Depression.
But he blamed his business failures on people mocking him because of his stature. He started being more aggressive.
He blamed everyone for his failures, even thought his servants were mocking him behind his back, so he decided to punish them.
It's said that he hired all average-sized servants and made them live in quarters half their size.
He wanted his servants to go ahead and suffer like he was suffering, to know what it felt like to be a little person.
One night, he just lost it.
He took his wife, he killed her, he went upstairs to where the children were, the two daughters, killed them, stuffed them in a closet.
He killed them all.
But then at that point, the servants had had enough. They basically just went into the house, ransacked it.
The servants burned the entire mansion to the ground.
I mean, this is the stuff horror movies are made of.
The property was abandoned and just became a party spot for kids.
The kids that would go out there and party claimed that these cherubs, which were about the size of little people, would come to life and chase after them.
Man, that must have been some good stuff that they were on back then.
After the murders, the police were there like nonstop, not from the partying there, but from the neighbors hearing just constant screaming.
The question is, did these murders ever happen? Or did this mansion even exist?
I have looked everywhere for a story about some murders up there, and I haven't found anything.
No one seems to know exactly where the house was, or even the name of the family.
The more accepted place is Donor Square on the corner of Tupelo and Chambers off of Fredericksburg Road behind Denham State Park.
So is this one of the most haunted locations in San Antonio? Or one of the best stories ever told?
A family who lived there claimed that while the mansion was gorgeous and the demise was sad, there was never any little people that lived there.
The reality is probably something that somebody started. I mean, this was back in the 20s and 30s. If you remember, that's when The Wizard of Oz came out, 1938, Little People.
It makes you wonder if these little people-sized cherubs are what gave the place its name.
You know, I could see all these kids coming to party at this place and not having a clue what the place is called. And they see these little cherubs over there and they're like, oh yeah, hey, you know, let's meet at Midget Mansion.
In my opinion, I think that the story of Midget Mansion was a hoax.
While Midget Mansion was a real place, although not named as such, its history remains a mystery to all except those who lived there. Many say urban legends exist to teach us something. But what can we all learn from the story of the dancing devil?
I've been referred to as a dancing devil back in my day. But wait, who's the dancing devil again?
The story of the dancing devil is about the Prince of Darkness trying to get his groove on in a nightclub in San Antonio, Texas.
This young woman's been warned by her family not to go out to the clubs.
She didn't listen to them, and she still went out. And there she saw this handsome man.
He's said to have been the most handsome man in the whole club, so I probably would have gone up to talk to him.
And he's beautifully dressed in an all-white suit.
One thing led to another. He extended his hand. She accepted, and they began to dance.
And oh my God, he was the Lord of the Dance.
This guy's moves are so good, the entire club has stopped to watch these two dance.
Everyone's having a great time. The girl's dancing with him until she steps on his foot.
She looks down, the entire club gasps at what they're seeing.
One foot that was actually a hoof, and the other foot was that of a chicken's foot.
The guy was a monster.
So naturally, she looks up at him in shock, and he has this devilish, wide grin on his face. And she starts to scream and scream and scream.
He laughs while everyone looks on in horror and just takes off to the men's room.
And from there, they say that he was gone in a puff of sulfur.
People knew in San Antonio that they had been visited by the devil, the dancing devil.
Did the devil really visit San Antonio that night? Or is this a story made up by parents trying to keep their kids away from the clubs?
This one seems really far-fetched in my opinion, but some people do believe it.
Lesson here, watch out for the bad boys.
If you remember, what came out in the 1970s? Saturday Night Fever. The dancing devil there is in his polyester suit. The bottom part of his feet is a claw and a cloven hoof.
I've heard of some janky ass feet, but a hoof and a chicken claw?
Well, I would love to really talk to the people that night to see what they saw, because we are talking about a club, and I'm sure there was some drinking going on.
If we're going to believe in the paranormal, I think we have to be open to something like this being possible.
For years, people have laughed off this story, but Jessica Herrera says she experienced unthinkable things after going inside the club for a documentary she's working on.
I filmed, I said thank you. I took like a exit sign, a brick, some glass. 2 days later, I'm starting to hear footsteps. I'm hearing growls. And there's this weird guy who just shows up out of nowhere. And he's in a full suit. There's something weird about his hand. It looks like a hoof. I saw things that, that were inhuman. I heard things that were inhuman. I'm pretty sure I saw the devil. I can say that it's haunted, that it's real.
So the next time you go dancing, be sure to check your partner's feet. In San Antonio, Texas, there are no shortage of creepy old cemeteries. But the Chinese graveyard on the city's south side has always been on a different level.
Of all the places I visited in that particular area, that was probably one of the ones that was kind of the most eerie and spooky.
That's just down the road from my house where I grew up.
This is a very small cemetery. It kind of almost looks like a dirt road going off into kind of a wooded area. But if you look on either side, you will notice that it's lined with graves.
The story takes place 60 to 80 years ago with a Hispanic family by the name of Guzman, who had a son who was in love with a Chinese woman.
And unfortunately, his family forbid him to meet with her.
At that time, that sort of thing was not accepted.
So what they made arrangements for was to go ahead and meet at the family's cemetery. Well, they would do this for a while until one day, the boyfriend was riding his horse and he was struck by lightning.
He and his horse were instantly killed.
The family buries him in the family plot.
His lover, being so brokenhearted over losing him, is said to have gone to his grave, which is there in that Guzman family cemetery property, and committed suicide there on the premises.
The family, they really kind of felt responsible for what had happened, so they decided to bury her in their family plot as well.
Hence the Loma China Cemetery, what we now call the Chinese graveyard.
It's said that if you go out there at night, you pull up to the gate, turn your car off, roll the windows down, and flash your lights 5 times, you'll start to see things.
What's supposed to happen at this point in time is you're supposed to see a kind of a white mist or even a full-blown, full-bodied apparition.
They would see an apparition of an Asian woman dressed in white that was 7 feet tall. And unfortunately, she has the bad habit of kidnapping children.
Is what people report seeing actually real? Or is it all just a convenient story to explain the cemetery's name?
In Japanese culture, there is an urban legend called Ahachi Shakuzawa, which literally translates to 8-foot tall woman. It's basically a demon entity.
You gotta ask yourself, how likely is it that 60 or 80 years ago, people in Texas would have known about Japanese folklore and would have concocted a story like that to go with this graveyard? I personally find it highly unlikely.
The one thing I find interesting about the Chinese graveyard is the sign that says no witchcraft. I mean, what had to happen for them to put that sign up?
And the other funny thing about that sign, it says no witchcraft, and then it says for info, call, and there's no number.
When I was out there and I did the routine, I didn't see a 7-foot spirit woman, but these strange lights started coming towards us.
I've been out there before and done it. We didn't see anything, but we heard plenty and got the hell out of there.
I think that there is something there.
I don't know what's out there, but there's just been too many people who have reported seeing and experiencing the same things for decades.
The grief that was felt by the two lovers was strong enough to still be residual.
I do believe the Chinese graveyard is haunted.
It's haunted.
I'm going to give that one a haunted.
Perhaps the 7-foot Chinese woman people see is the man's lover, who couldn't protect him in life, but has vowed to defend him for eternity.
It's crazy to think that at some place, sometime, someone told these stories for the very first time. The only question is, how much has changed since then? One thing is for certain. No matter what you believe, you're going to tell someone these stories. And the tale goes on.